Yes, hello, how are you feeling? We're super excited. Are you excited, Maureen?
I'm very excited.
Amazing. So I know you missed us a lot for the last few weeks. You have not been around. So today we are back. And today we just start with a short introduction. My name is Pius Prosper. I'm the project coordinator at Empower Limited.
And my name is Maureenrose Sangai. I'm the finance coordinator at Empower Limited.
Awesome, awesome. So today we are going to start with our food of thought. And today's quote is, effective communication is 20% what you know and 80% how you feel about what you know. As you've seen, today's topic will be more on the communication part. So to just a brief on this quote is, how do you effectively listen? You know, when someone communicates, how do you effectively listen to what that person is actually trying to communicate to you? And maybe from you, Maureen, what did you get? You know, like when you hear this thought, the 20% and 80%.
It is true actually, and communication is actually listening and communicating. So when you're saying something, you may be communicating, but if someone is not listening to you, then there's no communication there. So it's a role for two people.
Yes.
One who listens and one who communicates.
Yes.
So yeah, it's 80%. You said it's what?
It's 20% what you know, and the 80% how you feel. That means always,
Exactly.
even though, because sometimes we actually find ourselves, like when someone is talking, we feel like we know that thing. But there's always that 80% of what you don't know. So
Exactly.
that's why the listening part is very, very important.
It is very important.
Yes. So maybe we just move a bit on brief introduction about what is Empower, what do we do, and I'll leave this to Maureen. Welcome.
Well, as you know, I'm sure majority of you guys know what we deal with, but just to recap, we are a human capital consultancy firm, and we offer different services including talent, advisory, insight, and youth. And we're here to give you a little talk about how to communicate better in the workplace. As we know, we're both, we're at work, right?
Yes.
It's fun. We're doing a live video about how to communicate, but we're also at work.
Yeah.
So one of the major parts of working together as a team is communication.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
And let's begin with a little definition of communication.
Yeah.
What do you think communication means?
Yeah, for my side, I feel like to actually say that what is communication, it's more how do you transfer your ideas to someone else. And it normally varies because there will be through words. That means maybe you've written something. There will be through the body language. So maybe the way you do something like this, it actually means this. The other way. There will be through sound. So it's more of how do you transmit your ideas or information to actually someone else.
Exactly. So a little short definition is communication is the act of transferring information from one place, person, or group to another.
Yes.
And it can be through speaking, writing, body language, or any other medium.
And that means there's a lot of mediums of communication.
A lot. So
yes. So maybe now let's dive a bit on the topic now.
On the topic.
How to communicate effectively
in the workplace.
And I know that some of the viewers, maybe some of us are at the workplace, and maybe some are, maybe are students, some are parents. So this topic is not just focusing on the workplace, even for you as a parent, even for you as a student. So it's more, we'll be actually covering all angles. So yeah, welcome to start.
We'll start with the first point. Consider face-to-face or phone conversations. As we said, communication has a lot of mediums, ways to communicate,
Yes.
right? So I believe that with communication, you have to look at the type of communication you want to give and to see which is the best way to communicate. But for me, for example, we work in a very open work environment
Yes.
where I can see Pius is right across the corner and I'm right across the office. So for me to write an email directly to Pius, I feel like, no, I'm not angry at Pius. I don't want to avoid him. I want to go and speak to him and say, hey Pius, how are you? How was your weekend? You know what? I need you to do this, this, and this, or can you please help me with this, this, and this? And then just to formalize it, because we are at the workplace, you can send an email and say like, hey Pius, as we spoke a few minutes ago, I asked you to do this. Can you please send the report? So that makes it personal and also formal. So I think we should input a touch of personalization in our communication in order to make also meaningful connections, right? Because if I just email Pius, there's no human touch to it. He's just
Yeah.
gonna say, oh, Maureen just emailed me, you know? But if I go to him and say, hey Pius, what's up? How's everything? We've already, you know, touched up and catched up and be like,
Yes.
hey, Pius is fine, he's happy. And then after I send the email, then I formalize it. What do you think?
Yes, and yeah, and also like it normally falls back on what I like what what information do you intend to communicate.
Exactly.
So I mean you can just it can be general and basically in the workplace you find that there are teams that they're large, maybe more than 1,000.
Sure.
So would you be able to communicate with everyone? So maybe sometimes it would actually fall to another medium. But also going now back of what you said, that when there is that face-to-face conversation, there is that human touch, and you find that's why maybe we connect more as Empower team, because we are few and much of our conversation is more face-to-face. So it's more important for us to understand the group that you're actually trying to communicate, but also it's very, very important to actually know that the human touch, it's very important when it actually comes to the communication part.
So basically we're saying, doesn't mean if you're in a huge corporate company you have to go to everyone and go and say hey. But also if it's a small company or if it's someone you can actually go across to and say hey, I think it will make it more meaningful and they will remember it and say Pius or Maureen came and said hi, and then you know it will make them motivate them to actually help you out really quickly.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah, and also maybe something to add, like always, you know, as humans, there will be that memory to ourselves. Like I actually had a conversation with this person, but when you just send a message or a text and you didn't actually connect with that specific person through the physical part, the physical touch, even there's that missing part. So that's why it's very important to really ensure that to actually consider more on the part of the face-to-face conversation.
True. Our second point is encourage open dialogues and questions. Everyone has a voice.
Yes.
Now on this part is where we have to consider both people, the communicator and the person being communicated to, right? So when someone comes to you and say, hey, I need you to do a favor for me, or I need you to do this for me, or can you please help me with this, it means they need help, and also you're listening to them and see if you can be able to help them, right? So just remember that when communicating, you should always give your partner or your fellow person the opportunity to express themselves, and then you can be able to respond, right?
Yes. And maybe something that I can actually cement on that is it's very key always to ensure that when you're trying to have conversation with someone, avoid the closed question. The closed questions, whereas maybe maybe for example, I would say, Maureen, have you eaten? That would just be yes or no, right? But maybe, for example, if I said, maybe how's lunch? What did you eat? You'd actually go more wide and try to cover that topic. So that's why it's very important always when you're trying to have that dialogue, avoid the closed part questions and try to be open and ask those questions that will trigger someone to open up and actually communicate. Yes.
True. Also, another point is allow innovation and growth.
That's the most important part.
Exactly.
Because, for example, if at the workplace we have this situation where like everyone is free to communicate, or maybe someone from the down part, that means from the senior to the lower part, that there is that easy communication. That means even people can be more innovative, and that's something that also also applies at Empower, whereby if I feel like I have a certain idea, I have a certain innovation that I want to share, I will just go there to my director and say like, I have this and this. So if there is that effective communication at the workplace, it's really boosts up the innovation part.
Yeah, exactly.
Yes.
The confidence actually. The communication, good communication boosts someone's confidence. So they're able to open up and give out ideas, and it even improves their creativity. If someone has the opportunity to communicate, then they will be able to communicate.
Yes.
And any thought that comes into your mind, you don't have to say, oh my God, they may judge me, or no one maybe wants to hear me. But you can take it out and someone else can improve it, and in the end, innovation and growth, right?
Yeah.
Exactly. Another point is beware of body language.
That's the most important. Like that's the most, because there's this phrase that normally says that body language communicates more. Like you may not speak any, like a word, but just staying like this, we just mean, like we just understand that this person is maybe sad or maybe they're facing maybe this situation. But if you find someone is like, yes, how are you doing? There's this way of, they communicate.
True.
So that's the most important part. And for me, I feel like the workplace, to ensure that there is that effective communication, how do we also shape our body language? And that's the most important. Maybe what about you? What do you feel about
Yeah, I think body language plays an important part. For example, not even during communication, even during presentations, right?
Yes.
If you go there, you're slouched and you're worried, you're biting your nails, no one will listen to you because they'll be like, they don't even believe in themselves. But if you go out there, you're confident, even if you don't know, but you're confident that you will conquer it, they will believe in you and they'll say, okay, even though it wasn't the best, but they tried. You get points for trying. So it's the same with communication. So when a person is communicating with you, or when you're communicating with a person, make sure your body language actually shows exactly what you're communicating. You can't be communicating X, but your body language is showing Y.
Yes.
It's the same as when someone says, hey, I'm so happy, and they're crying. Because you're like, are you crying because you're happy? And it doesn't look like happy tears, actually, it's sad tears. So make sure your body language actually reflects what you're communicating. And also, as a person who's being communicated to, always look at the body language.
Yes.
It's one of the important things that will show you, is this person comfortable? Are they mad? Are they happy? Are they sad? Are they disappointed? You can see all these things by simply paying attention to body language.
And maybe Maureen, have you ever felt this scenario? Maybe, for example, maybe you went to a shop or maybe you went to a supermarket and you're trying to communicate something and that person hasn't said a word, but just the body language already says something. Whether maybe like, welcome customer, I'm so happy to have you. Or there is like, go away. Like how's the experience?
Yes, you get experiences. For example, you go to shops or you go to other people's offices or you go to the reception or to a bank. For example, I went to a bank one day. So Pius, you will be me, right?
Yes.
Okay, I'll shoot, because I was the one who experienced it. So, I'm sitting here, waiting for customers to come in, right? And I want you to approach me, and then I'll show you guys exactly what I went through. Okay?
Yes, I will show you, no problem. Habari.
Salama, nikusaidie nini?
Nataka nifungue account. Dada, nataka nifungue account.
Oh. Unataka kufungua account?
Yes, nataka nifungue account kwa sababu nataka nianze kuweka hela kwenye benki yenu.
Ulikuwa unasemaje?
Nataka nifungue account kwa ajili ya kuweka hela kwenye benki yenu.
Ngoja mimi sijui yani. Ngoja niangalie mtu mwingine, maybe someone can help you. And that's
now you see?
That's what I went through. You're talking to someone, they're not listening to you. They're not looking at you.
Yes.
And you're like, am I invited? Am I not? Do you not want to serve me? And then they look at you and then they look at the phone. So you're like, are you listening to me? Sometimes they don't pay attention and they're like, what did you say? And you're repeating yourself constantly. So when you give someone that form of body language or attitude, they already know that I'm not welcome, or this is bad customer service, or they're not good communicators. Or maybe you may find that person is maybe busy, but just communicate clearly and say, I'm sorry, I will be with you in a short while. Can I please just answer this email or answer this call? I'll get back to you. So that person already feels, oh, they're gonna do something else and then they'll come to me and pay attention to me.
Yeah, so amazing. So maybe let's do the other part. Now, because you actually faced this scenario. So let's now imagine that now I have come to you as a bank clerk, and now you're more excited.
Okay.
And let's see the body language, maybe how it will be actually different. Habari.
Salama, karibu.
Asante. Niko na nifungue account.
Unataka kufungua account gani?
Na nifungue account kwa ajili ya kuweka pesa za mshahara ambazo zitakuwa zinaingiziwa kupitia benki yenu moja kwa moja.
Okay, karibu sana. Naomba ukae, nitakuletea form ili uweze kujaza na kuweza kufungua account yako.
Asante sana. You see? Yes, amazing.
Very different, right? And you feel welcomed. Someone is smiling at you. They're happy. They're listening to you. They're not paying attention to other things. No phone, no computer that's distracting them. It makes you feel listened, right?
For sure.
Exactly. Well, that was a really good,
that was like,
role play, right? Another point is intend to be helpful.
I feel like for me, when I hear this, it's more of how can you be more empathetic when someone actually tries to communicate to you. It's more of how can you be in their shoes, and also try to understand their actually their problem, or maybe what they're trying to communicate to you. Because actually sometimes we tend to be like someone actually comes and try to communicate with you something, and you're more busy, like even your mind is actually not there. So it actually moves from there that you are just hearing and not listening to actually try to actually solve that problem. So how can you be more empathetic? How can you be more how can you have that intention to help? So yes.
I would add to that, you said hearing and listening. There's a huge difference between hearing and listening. You know, hearing, you're hearing, like they're saying something, and hearing because you have the ability to hear. But listening is actually articulating what they're saying, you know, so you can be able to understand and maybe support or help in case they're needing help or something. So on intending to be helpful, I'll go back to the body language part. When someone is communicating with you and your body language is already a barrier, you're already not being helpful to them. So whenever someone is communicating to you or you're communicating to someone, because it can happen two ways, right? Make sure what you're communicating has intent to be helpful. Or when someone asks you for a favor or asks you to do a certain task, you know, ensure you get all the information necessary, and also ensure you communicate all the necessary information or all anything that you may need from that person. That way the communication can be meaningful and helpful. Or even if you can't help that person, you know, you can always, you know, connect them with another person and say, I can't help you, I'm sorry, I'm not equipped to do that, but I can connect you with Pius who can help you. And then Pius can take it on and help out. And
maybe something to add. It's more also about actually sometimes you find that at the workplace we're actually loaded up with tasks, you know. So and maybe someone comes to you and tells you like, hey, Maureen, I have this task, can you please, or maybe trying to communicate something. We find sometimes, because our mind are already there, like I have a deadline, I have to finish, we actually try to avoid the part that I want to, I intend to, I mean to help you, and rather we just focus on that deadline that we're actually focusing on. So maybe sometimes it's more, if you feel like you are so loaded up with a lot of deadline that you need actually to accomplish, try to actually send up to someone else who can actually help, because that's also the other part that you intend to be helpful, rather than trying to communicate something, rather your mind is just somewhere else.
Yes, exactly. And our last point is listen, acknowledge, and empathize.
Yes. I think the listening part, because
it's very important.
We would have said hearing.
Yes.
But it's listening.
Yes.
So I think and that's the part that even you touched about it, that when someone is trying actually to communicate to you, how do you ensure that you're not just hearing that something that passes here and just goes away, but how do you ensure that when someone communicates to you, you try to digest it and actually provide the right answers, or the right answer that actually someone is actually looking for.
Exactly, because sometimes, guys, communication is not necessarily someone asking you for help, or you asking someone for help. Sometimes it's just information, you know. Communication is, you know, a transfer of information from one area to another, right? So someone could be giving you information, maybe don't pass there, there's a slippery floor, right? But you were not listening. You just heard someone saying, don't walk there, guys, there's a slippery floor. So if you didn't listen, you won't even remember, you won't think about it until you go and you slip and fall and you're like, oh, they actually said don't walk there, right? So sometimes it's not necessarily listening, it's also acknowledging. You need to acknowledge, because there's some communication, even in the office. There's a meeting, you find an email, you're like, I can't read it. Or someone is saying, guys, there's a meeting in 10 minutes, and you're not listening, you're just hearing, you're busy with other things. You find yourself, you've missed the meeting, and you're like, oh, why? And they're like, we communicated that, but you didn't acknowledge it. So listening goes with acknowledgement and also empathizing. Empathizing in terms of trying to, to be in the shoes of the other person communicating with you. Because sometimes what you think is small can be very big to other people, and everyone reacts differently to things, right? So when someone is communicating to you, don't brush it off, or don't say, that's so easy.
Yeah.
They're telling you that because it's not easy.
Mm.
So try to wear their shoes and say, if it was me, I wouldn't be happy, or I wouldn't be, comfortable, or I won't be, I wouldn't be happy if someone tells me it's actually very small, it's really annoying when you go to someone and say this and this and this, and they're like, that's so simple. You're like, if it was simple, I wouldn't be telling you this. So always remember that when someone is communicating with you, when you're communicating, listen to that person, acknowledge, and also empathize with them. As it's always about two ways. So you do it, they do it, then there's clear communication between two people, right?
Yes, and maybe, Maureen, have you ever been in a situation where someone is actually trying to communicate with you something, and you feel like this person is actually now you are the one communicating actually to someone, and you feel like that person is not listening at all, and you feel like maybe someone is out there. So when you faced that, how did you feel? And maybe to share out with our views, so to understand, like, always when someone tries to communicate with you, that's actually how they feel sometimes.
Exactly. You feel not acknowledged, right? As we said, listen and acknowledge. You feel as if that person does not acknowledge your presence, does not acknowledge your problem or your issue or the information that you're trying to convey. So sometimes that's why I said it's a two-way thing. If you're not in the right capacity to listen and pay attention to that person, you can ask them and say, I'm so sorry, I'm busy right now, can you please come back in 15 minutes? And they could say, this is very urgent, and then you measure and say, what I'm doing, is it urgent or is it not? Can I listen to this person? Can I support? And once you listen, don't just listen. Say, okay, they've told me this, maybe this is a problem. How can I help? Can I help? If I can't, who can help? Can I connect them to someone who can help, right? And also, always acknowledge, right? When someone tells you something, don't just listen to it and then continue with your business. Always say, hey, I've heard you. Thank you for that. It's like emails. When someone say, hey guys, this and this and this, you'll be like, hey, this is well noted. Thank you very much, right? So it makes the other person feel good because they know that they've listened, they've acknowledged, right? Not necessarily emphasize, because emphasizing sometimes deals mostly with problems or issues, but when listening and acknowledgement, it makes the communication line clear in a way that the next time something happens, someone says, I communicated with you, right? And you're like, but I didn't see it, but if you didn't see it, why didn't you ask? So it always creates more problems. So always remember, guys, when communicating, listen, acknowledge, and emphasize.
And the best part is you touch the other medium, which is the emails part. One of the biggest times which I see, especially at the workplace, you find that when someone sends you a email, and sometimes we actually tend to forget, and we don't even acknowledge, like maybe saying like well received or well noted. And sometimes after some time, then you just hear something happens and you're like, was this decided? But while I think like if we actually build that habit of trying to acknowledge, especially the emails part, we actually build up and we actually now tend to improve more on the part of the communication part, and try to avoid those scenarios when someone comes to you and says like, have you done this, and you say maybe I didn't see this, or maybe this didn't happen, and that
Yes, and I understand because at work sometimes you can get very swamped. It happens to the best of us, and sometimes even I am guilty of overlooking some emails or forgetting or seeing it and not. That's what I said. Even an email, you can see it, but you didn't read it, so you can't remember what it said. So you see the email and you're like, I'll read it later. And then 2 days later, someone comes and says, I asked for this, and you're like, oh, I didn't see that email, but I sent it to you the other day. So you go back to your emails and you find it there. So it could happen to the best of us. So I think what best that you can do is always, the moment you remember that, oh, this person sent me an email, reply. Even if it was 3 days later, they will be happy to say, great, they've received it, because the other person doesn't even know if you've received it, you've read it, you've understood it, because you didn't communicate. And later when they come to you, you're like, I didn't understand. They will ask you, why didn't you say so, right? So always remember, guys, communication is two ways, and always remember to respond, to acknowledge, and to listen.
Amazing. So we are moving on the third part, which is how can you improve? I mean, how can you improve how your organization communicates? So we first touch on the first part, which is always try to define goals and expectations.
Exactly.
Yeah. So maybe we can start from there.
With goals and expectations, I
Yes.
think it's, as we said, communication is two ways, right?
Mhm.
So always when you're expecting something from someone,
Yes.
always be very clear and specific.
Mhm.
Don't be vague
Mm.
in a point that you tell someone something and it doesn't make sense, or to them, how can they quantify it? For
Mhm.
example, let's say you're managing a team of salespeople and you go
Yes.
and tell them, I want sales to increase this month. So,
That's
right?
Right,
You're like,
yeah.
okay, so should I increase one person,
Two,
one
yes, yeah.
client, two
Mm.
clients, 10%
Yeah.
of sales,
Mm.
50%? So always be very specific and very clear on your goals and expectations.
Mm.
And always tell people exactly what you're expecting. And also remember, when you're telling and you're setting these clear goals and expectations,
Mhm.
always communicate to that person. Because sometimes there are things we may say that are not achievable, right?
Mhm.
So you give someone goals that are personally to them, their capacity cannot be able to accommodate that.
Mm.
They will always communicate back. So always, even if you're given goals and expectations by your line manager, let's say, right?
Yeah.
They've given you an expectation you feel personally you will not be able to
Mhm.
achieve. Always communicate, because if they give you these goals and expectations and you take them and not say, I can't do it, they will think you will do it.
Mm.
And then in the end, if you don't do it, they'll ask you, why didn't you say you couldn't do it,
Couldn't,
right?
yeah.
So when you receive or when you're given goals or expectations, or
Mhm.
when you're communicating, so when you're communicating,
Yeah.
be clear, concise, and specific. Like go
Specific.
straight to the
Mm.
point and say, this is exactly what I want, and give them the tools to be able to achieve them.
Yeah.
And you, who is receiving them, need to measure and say, can I be able to deliver?
Mhm.
If
Yeah.
I cannot be able to deliver,
Mhm.
always communicate and say, I cannot increase sales to 50%, but what I can do is to ensure sales will increase more than 30%.
Mhm.
You know, that way, even if it increases to 50%,
Mhm.
you've still increased more than the
Yes. Yeah.
expected goal that you're given,
Mhm.
right?
Yeah, that's the most important part. I love the part that you touched, how to ensure that when you're setting a goal,
Mhm.
to really be specific,
Yes.
to really have a clear timeline,
Mhm.
and also to also be measured, because
Yes.
not just every goal that is actually set
Yes.
is just there to be done. And if a goal does not have those three specific things, that's when now you feel like you are actually handled something, and
Mhm.
because it is actually not clear, then
Yes.
someone fails to deliver, and
Yes.
end of the day, there is no effective communication on that
Communication,
part.
yeah.
Yes. So maybe we move down the second part, which is clear deliver message. This is the most important part, and I think Maureen, you touched part of it,
Yes,
which
I
is
think so.
always to avoid the vague part.
Yes.
To always have specific. Maybe your boss asks you, like, have you finished this? Or maybe have you been able to finish your report? Then instead of starting out from like, I did this, there was this challenge, I didn't do this, it's better to start on the specific part that no. Then from there, then you can start, okay, maybe I didn't finish my report because of 1, 2, 3. But sometimes we actually tend to be on the vague part. We'll be general, then the specific message
Yes.
is at the at the
Yes.
end, and that's the most important part.
Exactly, guys. And this goes both ways.
Yeah.
During oral communication or even during emails.
Mhm.
You can't write a whole paragraph and the person cannot
Mhm.
see
Yeah.
what you want. So you should always, that's why we say the body, what's that called? The subject,
The
on the
subject,
email
yeah.
needs to carry the message
Mhm,
so that the
yeah.
person can know, is this email for me? Because sometimes you're CC'd in emails that are not necessarily your, they don't really play a role in your part in the office.
Yes.
So you see these emails, so if you see them, you're like, this is not me. I will read it, but it's not directly
Yes.
addressed to me.
Yeah.
So always ensure that your message is clearly communicated and clearly delivered to
Yeah.
the right person, that what do we call the relevant parties involved in that
Yeah.
particular project or particular communicating, whatever communication you want to give, ensure it goes to the right person.
The right person, yes.
So it should be the right message to the right
Right to the
person.
right person.
Because if it's the right message going to the wrong person,
Yeah.
it's not meaningful.
Mhm.
And if it's the wrong communication going to the right person, it's also not
Not-
meaningful.
yeah.
So always the right communication to the right person.
Amazing. Yeah, so we are moving now. We're moving chap chap. So our next is how to really have a defined communication channel.
Yes.
And I think this is the most important part, because each organization have their own way of actually their their own channel.
Yes.
You find there is organization that maybe they would use more Skype. There is maybe other that they would maybe more need more WhatsApp.
Yes.
Or maybe Slack. So
Yes.
it actually depends with which channels you feel you find as an organization that more comfortable to you,
Yes.
and also that would be also getting to the right person, because sometimes you may say, okay, maybe as an organization, maybe let's use Slack, and you find maybe there is a group of people who maybe they're not convenient with that.
Yes.
So I think that's the most important part, like how to always ensure that you are using the right channels
Yes,
to the right
exactly.
people. Yes.
True. I want to also emphasize that the most formal means of communication in the office is
Yeah.
usually email. But sometimes emails may not be efficient. They're formal, but they may not be efficient. For
Yes.
example, we are a small organization. We can see each other there. I will send you an email, but I can also come to you and say, hey, can you
Straight,
please
yeah.
send me this? Because you're there, they will quickly go to their computer, send you that email right away, and you're done. So, like we initially said previously, you can communicate orally and then formalize it in an email.
Yes.
But I believe every organization should have clear communication channels to say, this will be considered you have communicated.
Yes.
Because sometimes you can't just text your line manager and say, hey, I'll be sick, I can't come to work. You know, what if they don't see the text? What if maybe they don't have WhatsApp, or they don't have internet to see their WhatsApp? You didn't go to work, so you didn't go to work,
Yes.
right? But they could say, in order for you to call in sick, just call your line manager. So you pick up the phone and call and say, hello, I will not be in the office tomorrow because I'm not feeling well. I'll be going to the hospital. Then they'll say, confirmed, no problem, and you're sorted, right? So always ensure you understand and know the clear communication channels that are supposed to be used in the work area. Is it phone? Is it text? Is it text accepted? Sometimes texts are not accepted. There are
Yes,
other
yeah.
organizations, they accept texts. Do you call? Do you have to email? Maybe you have email on your phone and you have internet.
Yes.
So organizations will say, if you're not coming in the office, or if there's any problem, maybe you'll be in late, send an email to HR and you can say, hey, I cannot be in this and this and this. So you can email because you have email on your phone. If you don't have email on your phone, you
Yeah.
don't have access to email, they can say, send a WhatsApp.
Yes,
They will accept
yes,
it.
yeah.
If not, they'll say call. So you have to call. And when you call, they take it as formal communication,
Yes, yeah.
right? So always understand, and for the organization need to define your communication
Your
channels.
communication. So maybe basically to you now, now being part of Empower, what channel do you actually prefer the most whenever it comes to that?
My favorite is usually going to the person.
Yes.
I think with Empower, because I can see everyone,
Yeah.
and maybe I want something be done quickly, and I know that person has it on their computer. If I send them the email, until they finish their task and go check their
Yes,
email,
yeah.
maybe 10-15 minutes, and I need it right away. So I will go there and be like, hey, Pius, this, have you
Yeah.
done it? Yes, I have. Can you please send it to me? And they will send it to me right then and there. I go sit back on my desk and I have the report. But most of the time it's email,
Yeah.
because emails, like I said, formalization.
Yeah.
Because you may go to Pius and give them a task, and then later
They said
you
maybe I
forgot and
Yes,
say,
yeah.
you didn't tell me that. There's no proof that you asked them to do a certain task.
Yeah.
So always remember, when you know these communication channels, always formalize them. Do they want a letter? For example, the government wants a letter. Always send a letter. Don't say I've spoken to a government official on the phone. What have they asked for? Send them a letter and say, I've received this communication because of this and this, and I'm sending this letter to confirm my receipt of this and this. In the office, you've already given someone a task. Go back and sit and say, hey, I've given you this and this. You confirmed to complete it by this date. Please confirm receipt. And they will say received. So it's confirmed and it's formal. So in a way, it makes it more formal, and it also helps you for reference in the future.
Yeah.
Because sometimes a person can leave the office, could not come in the office because they're sick. You can always forward it to the next person and say, hey, I had asked Pius to do this, but he's not in the office because he's not well. Can you please support? Instead of starting to say, oh, hey, you know, I spoke to Pius, but he's not in the office, so you know what, can you do this? it looks very disorganized, no?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, awesome. So now we're moving to our next point, which is always to ensure that you keep everyone involved. And I feel like also this one normally falls back as we talked on the part of the emails, the channels, but yeah, it's actually very important to keep everyone involved. But now, not that you now need to keep everyone involved, because sometimes we find that we may see just a certain individuals at their workplace, while maybe they don't specifically need that message. So we actually advise to keep everyone involved, but also you need actually to understand what kind of message are you trying to communicate, so as that you first deliver that message to that specific person that the message is actually intended to, but not just you just need to deliver just to everyone. And maybe someone will find maybe they like that message is actually not intended to, and maybe at the end of the day you just bombard them with messages that maybe they won't even read. So I think that's the most important part. Maybe from you, maybe something to add up.
Yeah, I think you've really touched the basics of it. Keep everyone involved that's relevant. I'd add to that, everyone that's relevant should be involved. So whenever you're communicating about something that has a certain department involved, always ensure that department is also included in that conversation. That way you don't have to repeat yourself, because this also helps you, because you don't have to repeat yourself twice or 3 times, right? Because they are already involved in the situation, they can quickly jump in. Because for example, let's say you're communicating with a client, right? I'm sending the client an email without CCing my line manager or my team members, so no one knows I'm communicating with that client. And then the client has confirmed it's a project that's booked, right? But I did not communicate with anyone, did not CC anyone in the email. It was just me and the client. And then God forbid you get sick or something happens or you forget and you're not in the office. So the client was communicating directly with you. So they will be busy looking for you. But since no one is in there to be able to jump in and say, hey, sorry, Maureen is not in the office, but I can support. What is the issue? Then, it doesn't make sense, because you've already wasted a client's time, you've not involved the right people, and if someone happens, that means it's a lost project, right? But if your colleagues are, copied in the email, they can easily see that the client has answered, because there's the reply all, so they reply to all and say, hey Maureen, this and this and this. And since you're not there, someone can say, hey, sorry to interject, it's me, I'm her supervisor, or I'm her line manager or colleague, she's not in, I will support from now on. So they already know. That way, even if you're not in the office, other things can still continue without the need to always call you and be like, hey Pius, where are you? What's happened? What about this client? Everyone is involved.
Awesome. And our last, which is
his favorite.
Yeah, this is my favorite actually. Have team building activities. I just have a testimony for this. When we are actually delivering one of our clients' team building, we actually got a message from one of the team members when they were actually trying to reflect back how the experience was. And one of them said that for the first time, I was actually able to compete with my manager and even play football and even enjoy. And this is something that I've never done, because we just find ourselves in the in the morning we just pass in the corridors. So there is no that like there's no that connection that this person have. So for me, I feel like team building can actually build that effective communication. And that's why even as Empower, that's it's one of the one
of our services.
We are one of the services that we are pushing. Yes. And we believe that if companies will actually invest on the team building, one solution that they would solve is they would always have that effective communication. Because if I have a challenge with you as my manager, we connect, because the good part about the team building part, we move from the work and we have that human connection, and that's the most important part. So you find if we meet at the office, now it won't just be manager X and employee Y. Now we move from being that and we'll be more of Pius and Maureen. So there'll be that connection, and that's the most important part. So maybe something to add up.
Yes, I will add on that and say, in work, we are colleagues, but we're also a family. It's a mini family that you spend you're 8 to 5 with every single day, with an exception of weekend or when you're on leave. So it's your family. So you go home to your actual family, but these other people, they're your family as well. So to be able to clearly communicate also needs a form of meaningful connections, meaningful relationships. We don't have to just say, hey, can you do this for me? Hey, can you do that for me? Thank you, bye. You can also add a little bit of human touch, and it will also help to open, to open more dialogues. People can communicate easier with someone they're comfortable with, and you can't be comfortable with someone unless you've experienced other forms of activities with. For example, the team building activities. After the football match, I'm sure when they meet, like, hey boss, do you play football? I play football. Let's go play football one more time. So they create meaningful relationships after that, and it becomes easier for people to communicate. So I believe organizations should invest in these activities. And these activities can be as simple as, a day out, family day out, colleagues day out. It can be a trip. It can be a hiking trip. It can be all forms of events that can help people work as a team, but outside of work. Because we're always used to working as a team inside work, but we need to be able to do that outside as well. I don't want to meet Pius on a Sunday afternoon and not be able to go and say hi to him outside, right? Because I'm not used to Pius. We just really just email each other for work and stuff like. No, I want to see Pius. Like, hey Pius, how are you? Is this your family? Yes, this is my family. Oh, nice to meet you. This is my colleague Maureen, and then everyone goes their separate ways. So these are forms of things that help teams create meaningful human relationships that also lead to great communication in the office.
Sure.
Exactly.
Kabisa. Yes.
This was such a heavy topic, guys.
Yes. And
I feel like we were so serious the whole time.
Yes, we were so serious for sure. Is there any questions maybe from the viewers' part? Okay, so amazing. So
I believe it was a learning point.
It was a learning point.
Because even when Pius and I were talking, we were so excited about this. We were like, oh my God, I wish everyone could just tune in and listen to this, because it's one of the most important things. It doesn't just work with employees or people in working in companies, but also students. How do you communicate with your teachers, with your fellow students, even as people in families? There are people who can't talk directly to their parents. People can talk as siblings to siblings, So communication plays a huge role in every form of life, in every part of life, right? And you need to communicate to be able to be heard, to be listened, and to be acknowledged, right?
Yes, and also the best part is it's an everyday learning process.
Exactly.
It's something that you cannot just wake up today and be like, I'm the best communicator.
No.
Because you always meet groups of people with different ways of communication.
Yes.
So how do you always actually put it in a way that it's a learning process for you, and not bind yourself, be like, no, I'm not actually ready to learn. So it's more how you actually keep yourself updated. And also the most important part, which you're actually touching as our last is Yes, okay. There's a question.
No, there are no questions, but I feel like this was more of a learning experience for people to get to hear your side. So just for our viewers who will see this video and who are watching right now, we would want to hear your views. You'll go in the comment section and tell us what you'd want us to speak about next week.
Exactly.
So the floor is yours,
We're ready
guys.
for you.
We are so ready. Yes.
We have a huge, exciting announcement.
Drum rolls for that, for sure.
Where can we get drums? Drums for your?
Yes. Drums.
You have been, the whole purpose of Yellow Couch has been to communicate with you and connect with you guys directly.
Yes.
But now, Mr. Pius, Mr. Mr. Generation Empower himself is here to announce that we have 2 new partners.
Woo!
Who are
Yes! Woo!
That's why you're on the background, guys.
Yes, always excited.
We would like to shout out our Gen M official partners, KVTC, which is Kilombero Valley Tea Company, and Moara Limited.
Moala! Welcome on board.
Thank you, guys. Thank you so much for believing in us, and thank you for sponsoring our huge platform for youth. And guys, we are ready for you. Are the applications
Yes.
Unfortunately, they're closed, but we will be with you next year.
Next
We're
year.
back next
Yes.
year. We've already closed. We already have our cohort 1, and we've already have our 2 new sponsors and more coming. Thank you guys, and thank you for joining us.
Yes, for cohort 1, please just get ready
Get
because something amazing, is being cooked.
Amazing
And
is coming.
just be ready. And also for partners who have not confirmed, we are looking forward to have you on
We're
board.
here.
Thank you. Yes.
Have a great day, guys.
Woo!
Bye.
Bye.